Okay, cool. Thank you so much for everyone for joining virtually, joining in person. My name is Jesse Wieland. I'm the Associate Director at the Office of National Fellowships. And we're going to be talking primarily about the Benjamin A. Gilman International Scholarship today. But at the Office of National Fellowships, we work with many different scholarships and awards that can help fund study abroad experiences, domestic experiences, research experiences. And so we'll touch on a few others. As we're going through the presentation, please feel free to type a question into the chat. Feel free to raise your hand. I'm happy to stop where we are and go over. If you have a question about the essays, about the award, anything like that, we will have time for questions at the end, but feel free to ask during. So before we get into all of that, and let me minimize this so I can actually see the slide. So the difference between a scholarship and a fellowship, it can be a little bit complicated, and different awards will maybe define it differently, but at least for our purposes, the easiest way that I organize everything in my head is when I'm thinking of a fellowship, I'm thinking of a scholarship that has a learning outcome. And so that can be in relation to research. It can be an international experience. It can be a foreign language study. But regardless, by the end of my fellowship experience, I'm going to have learned or created or studied something that is going to be beneficial either to my academics, my undergraduate degree. Maybe it's relevant for graduate school. Maybe it's a relevant internship. But I will have created something. I will be better off because of that experience. Now, fellowships are very similar to kind of your traditional scholarship in that they are nationally competitive in many cases. But at ONF, we help students apply. And I'm so rude. I didn't even have you introduce yourself. Wait, let's take a quick pause so we can also. Yeah.
Hello, everyone. I'm the graduate assistant for ONF, Keyshawn.
And so sorry, I just looked over and I was just like, oh shit. You can tell it's the start of the semester and I'm still trying to get back into the swing of things. And so Keyshawn and I will both be helping students apply for the Gilman Scholarship and for many other opportunities. But back to what I was saying, and so there is this level of competition, but that's never going to be a reason why you shouldn't apply. Keyshawn and I are both here to help you with your writing, help you with your application, and make sure that you're as competitive as possible. But at ONF, we help students apply for these nationally competitive opportunities. We also help students apply for opportunities at Florida State and scholarships here and everything in between. And so what you're going to find with this Gilman application and what you would be writing for here that may be applicable, that type of writing, the content that you're including is going to be applicable to many other opportunities. And so at the end of the day, what we're hoping to develop is your ability to write about yourself, your experiences, your academic interests, your goals, because you'll kind of start to see how a lot of these different fellowships are asking you different iterations of the same questions. And it's kind of like riding a bike. You will get better at that. And so I may have touched on some of this already, but why work with the Office of National Fellowships? So we are going to sit down with you, go over these prompts, go over these essays, and really help paint a clearer picture. Even if for you personally, I'm still trying to figure that out as a first or second year student or third year student. But for these application reviewers, we want to make sure we're giving them as much specific content to go off of as possible to be able to evaluate your application as fairly as possible. And like I was already saying, writing these fellowship applications, this is going to be beneficial for the entirety of your undergraduate career as you're applying to not just fellowships and scholarships, but in your classes, as you're writing essays, as you're maybe writing a research proposal, or maybe if you are interested or pursuing an honors in the major thesis, if you plan on applying for graduate school, like this type of academic writing is going to be relevant in all of these cases. And what you'll start to see, hopefully, is the goal, is the way that we are often trained to write in high school, that 5-paragraph format, that intro, body, conclusion, it's really awful, and it's not applicable here because in many cases these essays are asking you to write very concise, like 500-word essays or in Gilman's case, multiple essays, that are a few thousand characters. And if you spend all of that time, well, let me preface what I'm about to say and let me reiterate what I say at the very, you're not using your space effectively. So again, that's why Keyshawn and I are here to help you with your writing. The others are pretty self-explanatory. Gilman and many of these other fellowships really force you to connect with campus departments, with your mentors, and that is going to be beneficial, not just for this opportunity, but as you progress through your time at Florida State. While letters of recommendation aren't going to be required for the Gilman application, for other fellowships, they are. So you want to make sure that not just with your faculty and your professors, but with staff at Florida State, with your other mentors, maybe through internships, build positive connections, go to office hours, sit down with them, so they not just know who you are, but they can speak to your goals, your interests, and why you're pursuing the opportunities that you are on our campus. And that last point, again, kind of like what I already said, you will start to see how all of these applications are asking very similar questions. And so with the Gilman Scholarship, I think it's a fantastic opportunity in and of itself. But throughout the years that I've worked on Gilman, I think it's rarer that students will receive a Gilman Scholarship and that's their one and done. And it's like, okay, I've explored the world of fellowships and I don't need to anymore. But very often, because Gilman as part of a much larger umbrella of opportunities through the Institute for International Education, IIE. And so many students will, if that receive this opportunity, go on this international experience, kind of get the taste for that type of, boots on the ground learning, I guess, for lack of a better phrase. It's like, I want to do that again, or maybe that inspired me to pursue something a little bit different, or maybe help me identify communities that I would like to work with, or maybe now I'm really interested in language study, but whatever that may be. Many times I've had Gilman scholars that then go on to apply for other opportunities, not just through IIE, but through ONF. And again, this writing process, this application process will become easier the more that you do it. Let me just put a couple of people in. Now to kind of get into, actually, before we get into more of the specifics for the Gilman Scholarship, does anybody have questions about ONF, the Office of National Fellowships, or about writing in general, anything else that we can address right now? Not. Cool. All right, so the whole reason why I'm sure most of you are here. So the Benjamin A. Gilman International Scholarship, or if we from now on just would like to say the Gilman Scholarship, I'm fine with that, has been around for a little over 20 years. And the reason why this scholarship was developed, and so some of these other opportunities through IIE, the Institute for International Education, that includes your Boren Scholarship, your Critical Language Scholarship, the Fulbright U.S. Student Program. IIE started to see, like I said, a little over 20 years ago, that many of these opportunities were catering to students with a lot more privilege, who could afford these opportunities, who understood this academic realm. And what IIE wanted to do was help students of high financial need be able to access international study and other experiences that they have been traditionally left out of for no other reason than they couldn't afford it. And so one of the main requirements for a Gilman Scholarship is that you are either at the time of application or during your experience abroad, you are receiving a federal Pell Grant. We'll get into more opportunities at the very end of this presentation that you might be interested in that don't have that same requirement, but that is kind of a non-starter for Gilman. If you don't qualify for a Pell Grant, you're not going to be eligible. This isn't the right opportunity for you, but there are many others that we can look into. And so when I just say a Gilman Scholarship, I guess the most reduced form of that is that up to $5,000 scholarship to apply towards a program of your choosing. That can be for a summer, a fall, or spring, or that can be for an entire academic year. But it's up to, and the vast majority of students that we have that do receive Gilman scholarships are usually within that $3,500 to $5,000 range. And so it does vary, but Gilman can be stacked with other scholarship opportunities. So it can be a piece of a much larger pie, so to speak. Now, there are other Gilman scholarships that you might be eligible for or interested in. And so if you are interested in foreign language study, you do not need to have a background in these languages. You just need to understand why these languages are important for your academic and professional future. So what you would apply to if your study abroad program is focused on the study of that language. That can be a program through Florida State University, that could be a program through another institution. But you would, what you would be applying for is called the CNLA. It stands for Critical Need Language Award, Gilman Scholarship, and that is up to $8,000 to apply towards that program. There is also a newly minted STEM fellowship through the Gilman Scholarship. So if your program abroad is focused on research in that larger STEM umbrella, you can qualify for up to $6,000 of funding. And if you are the dependent of an active duty military member, you can apply for what is called the Gilman McCain Scholarship. It is exactly the same as a Gilman Scholarship in every way, but that award is not Pell exclusive. You just need to show that you do have financial need. Does all of that make sense? So when I'm saying, Gilman Scholarship, just know I'm referring to that standard up to $5,000 award, but we do have, all of these are Gilman Scholarships, but there are a few other caveats dependent on the program that you are pursuing. So that program, of course, I thought this was working, and that's what I get for thinking. Here we go. Hey, there we go. So just to briefly touch on the eligibility, you do need to be a US citizen or a national of the United States, an undergraduate in good academic standing. That has never been an issue from students that I've worked with, but if that is something you would be concerned with, I'm happy to talk to you about that. You do need to be, like I said, receiving a Pell Grant at the time of application or during the time that you are abroad. And this next one can be a little bit confusing. You need to be in the process of applying to or accepted into a credit-bearing study abroad experience. So for example, there are 2 Gilman application cycles every year. There is one in the fall, one in the spring. Obviously, we are talking about the spring deadline. But for most students in the fall, and some students in the spring, I have not yet been accepted into the program that I'm applying to. So for example, last cycle in the fall, when I was working with students that were planning to study abroad through Florida State international programs, no one had been accepted into their program yet. That does not mean you aren't eligible for Gilman, but what that does mean is in your application, you need to, as specifically as you can, say, this is the organization I'm planning to study through. These are the classes that I plan to be taking at my study center abroad. This is the impact I hope it has on me, what I'm hoping to learn, and this is what it's going to do for my future. Now that narrative changes a little bit for most students, again, in the spring, and that, well, hopefully you've been accepted to a program. If you haven't, you're still eligible to apply, but you just need to paint that clear picture for the review committee. Because if I don't know, like for example, I've reviewed for Gilman for many years, and if I'm reading an essay and all I see is like, you're going to Italy, then it's like, I mean, I want you to, like, yeah, I want to go, eat pasta and drink wine and have a hell of a time, but as a reviewer, I need to understand what you're doing to engage with the culture, to what are you doing academically, are you working with faculty, are you doing research, I need to know that there's some substance there. And then I hope you're going and eating a lot of pasta, drinking a lot of wine, having a great time, responsibly, but you get my point. So Gilman cares less what you're doing and where you're going, more that it's going to have an impact on you, a positive impact on you, but it does need to be credit bearing. And so when we think of study abroad, I think we traditionally think of academic programs, like I'm taking classes abroad, and that's fantastic. That's absolutely an option. You can also pursue internships as long as you can, again, you can maybe sign up for, a 3 credit hour internship course through Florida State. And then, okay, so for that internship, I'm working with this museum or this dig site in Italy. I've had students do that in the past. And then again, I'm able to explain what I'm doing. I've also had students that have pursued, and let me see in the chat. I know that FSU has study abroad programs. Does that count? Yes. So anything, actually, I don't want to say anything. The vast majority of things through Florida State, if you are looking at FSU international programs, if you're looking at FSU global exchange programs, if you're looking at global scholars at Florida State, if you're looking at, what's that other cultural exchange program? It's through the globe. Beyond Borders at Florida State, all of those count for credit. And so in that case, it's kind of easy. Well, I'm applying to this program at Florida State. I know it counts for credit. Then boom, 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 I'm checking my boxes. Where this comes, maybe gets a little bit more complicated for some students is I'm applying to an opportunity through Duke University. Maybe it's open to more than just Duke students, but I'm applying to this program and I need to make sure that credit transfers. Then there's some hurdles we need to jump through, but it's not impossible. But you just need to make sure that that program qualifies for academic credit. And then the last one, as we get further and further distance from the pandemic and from lockdown, this is becoming a little bit less of an issue, but it is of note, and you can just Google US Department of State Travel Advisory. It's going to be the first link that comes up. Most countries are going to be that level 1 or 2 where Florida State has established ties. So if you're wanting to go to, Valencia, if you're wanting to go, to London, you're going to be fine. But I've had students that have, through global scholars, through global exchanges, through other programs, have studied in parts of the world that, it's harder to access because, when we're talking nationally about US study abroad opportunities, not as many programs exist there. They're harder to access. But I've had students that have done research or done internships in West Africa, in Southeast Asia, and we just need to make sure that where you're going is listed as that level 1 or 2, or if you're studying in a country, that is maybe say a level 2, maybe there's a region within that country that could be a level 3. We just need to make sure you're not in that region. But this is usually pretty good to pretty easy to check. But again, if you have concerns, we can talk about that in the one-on-one meeting. Goodness, why is it? I'm just going to keep coming back here. This clicker is giving me nightmares. Any questions about eligibility? I'm happy to go into some of the selection criteria for Gilman, and then we'll get more into the application components. But any questions about eligibility? Cool. And so, okay, so maybe this is jumping ahead in a little bit, but I think this is still helpful to talk about now. But this is thinking, okay, so after you submit your Gilman application, what is the committee looking for? And so it's these 6 criteria, not all of which may be applicable to you, kind of depends on your program, but academic preparedness and impact on your trajectory. And so, like I was saying a little bit earlier, is like, if you just tell me you're going to Italy, it's like, that's not giving me much other than the location. I want to know the classes that you're taking. I want to know the internship you're participating in. And I want to know, and if I don't know what your goals are, it's going to be really hard for me to understand that trajectory. I want to see that longevity to make sure it's like, okay, so we invest in Keyshawn, and Keyshawn's going to go and pursue this social work internship in London. Like, great. Okay. What communities are you working with? Like, what are you hoping to learn? What is it about the culture? Okay, great. And then Keyshawn's wanting to move on to be a social worker, is wanting to do this work back in the United States. Like, okay, cool. I can see how this internship is really going to impact your academic trajectory. What we as Gilman are going to get out of that is a future professional that, cares about culture and international experiences, cares about the communities that we're working with, and maybe down the line, reinvest in Gilman, because they do offer, we'll get into this later, Gilman does offer alumni opportunities to serve as a mentor to future applicants. So anyways, I need to know that trajectory. Diversity of background and experience is very open-ended. There is this common denominator between applicants. Okay, so everyone is receiving a federal Pell Grant. Everyone applying has a financial need to some degree. But what financial need means to me or means to Keyshawn or means to someone else, that's going to look different. I want to know about your lived experience. I want to know, about your time before Florida State, maybe about your time during your time at Florida State. We can talk about in a one-on-one meeting, what are the most relevant aspects of your story, maybe relative to what you're doing abroad, maybe relative to your goals to highlight. So as a reviewer, I know who you are relative to this experience. Destination can be important. So Gilman does have a preference to help students access parts of the world, like I was saying earlier, where most students don't study abroad for no other reason than there's not as many programs there. Maybe a flight, is extremely expensive. If you're wanting to go to New Zealand, that's going to be like, $2,500, dollars at least. It's not cheap, and so it's like a little plus on your application if you are studying, in Eastern Europe, if you're studying anywhere in Africa, if you're studying anywhere in Asia, not anywhere in Asia, I should say primarily Central, South, or Southeast Asia. More programs are beginning to exist in Japan and Korea and Taiwan, and that's fantastic. But so Gilman has this preference, but still the majority of students, because of volume, are still being sent to your Spain's, your France's, your Germany's, your Italy's, and a lot of Western and Central Europe. So if that's where you're wanting to look and apply to, like, you should, don't be afraid of that, but just know that Gilman has this preference, for students that are studying in under access parts of the world when thinking about American Study Abroad programs. Impact to community is important, both the community that you're going to, and when we get into the essay prompts, this is going to make a little bit more sense. So Gilman wants to see, what is the impact that I'm making in this space? Why is it important for someone like me, with the experiences that I've had, or with the academic interests that I have, with the goals that I have? Why is it important for me to engage in this part of the world? One of the essays, so that's one of your short essays. Your other short essay is going to be about your impact in the community that you're returning to. And again, that is a community for you to define. That could be Florida State University. That could be your clubs and organizations here. That could be my hometown. Maybe that could be my former high school. Or maybe that could be an organization that I volunteer with in Leon County. Regardless, you identify that community and you identify how your time abroad, how your studies abroad is going to positively influence and positively impact that community. Now, the last two, again, only relevant if you're applying for the Critical Need Language Award through Gilman. And so there's going to be an additional short essay, and like 2,000 characters, where you're going to need to delve into why that language is so crucial to your future. And the same goes if you're applying for that optional STEM fellowship. Why is this research? Why is this lab that I am partnering with? Why is that so crucial for what I'm doing in the future? Any questions about that selection criteria or what Gilman reviewers are looking for? Cool. Okay, so where to get started with the Gilman Scholarship? What you're going to want to do, I know this sounds pretty obvious, start with their website. They have many great resources and blogs and videos that you can, even a podcast that you can listen and hear from alumni of the program. Reach out to me or Keyshawn. This is now my 9th year working with the Gilman Scholarship. I have seen many classes of Florida State students that have participated in the programs you might be interested in, studied in the countries that you're wanting to go to, who are now in graduate school, firmly in their careers, that I'd be more than happy to connect you with. We've had multiple Florida State alumni that have served as Gilman Scholarship ambassadors over the years, and so would love to be a resource if I can. But create an account, go through their website, look at the prompts, and just start to kind of like get those gears turning for what it is that what do I want to highlight about myself? If you have an idea for where you would like to go, great. How does that all fit into the picture? But to craft an effective Gilman application, you do need to have an idea of where you're going. Ideally through the program that you're going through, and that's kind of what we list here under this that second bullet point: international programs, global exchanges, global scholars, beyond borders, AIFS. That's more of a national program that's open to all students. But what is it that you're hoping to apply for? Or what is it that you've been accepted to? Great, we'll talk about that. And then this last bit is set up an appointment with Keyshawn, myself, Bonnie, who's not here today, but is another advisor in our office, to sit down and talk about those essays, talk about your goals, because it's not required that you work with us. You can do this entirely on your own. I'm actually in the process of updating these numbers, but there's not much variance, but what you can see is working with, if you apply completely on your own without, and I have the numbers to back this up. And so if you apply on your own, that acceptance rate is right around 20%, which is not bad when we're considering a nationally competitive fellowship. But that's actually below, I think it's right around 22% is that typical acceptance rate for the Gilman Scholarship. So you're actually being accepted just slightly under the national average. Whereas if you're working with an advisor, if you're meeting with myself, Keyshawn, or Bonnie regularly over that application cycle, it's about 2.5 times more likely that you will be accepted. So it's about a 62% acceptance rate. And we've had a lot of success since the challenges of the pandemic. I think if we're looking at it right now, I think this was accurate 2 years ago, it was right around 90%. It's dipped a little bit since then, but that's because more people are applying to the Gilman Scholarship. But the point remains the same. Work with an advisor, have someone go through your writing with you. I know that can be kind of awkward initially in sharing either personal experiences or sharing my goals. But trust me, we have been doing this for a long time. We are happy to help you in any way that we can. And I think once you get that initial awkwardness of sharing your writing with someone out of the way, it becomes easier. And I like to think I'm not too scary. So, you tell me, but now the application components. And just to reiterate, if you have questions at any point, feel free to type into the chat and I'll circle back to it. So what are you going to be asked to do? And oops, I should have updated that. The deadline for the Gilman application, that is going to be March 7th, I believe. So not October 5th. There is another one coming up next fall in October. But for right now, we're about what is that? About 1.5, I guess, just under 2 months away from about 1 3/4 months away from the deadline, which I promise you is plenty of time. If you get started early, we can really fine tune this application ahead of that deadline. Now, the first major component that you're going to be asked to write is that statement of grant purpose. And so what 7,000 characters equates to is about 1.5 pages, single space. And when you look on the website, when you look at the prompts, you're going to see these 4 bullet points, kind of convoluted bullet points that make up the statement of grant purpose. And it's asking you to do a lot. And so it's asking you to both write about your goals and aspirations. It's going to ask you to write about your program. It's going to ask you to write about your experiences or challenges that you've overcome or whatever that may be. And sometimes when I read through students' initial essays, it's kind of just like that information is kind of mixed. Maybe it's not as well organized, but it's all there. But again, just to reemphasize, in meeting with an O&F advisor, we can make sure that your narrative is streamlined, like it all makes sense, of like starting maybe with those formative experiences that then segue into your program and the goals that you have during your time abroad, and then maybe conclude with the impact that I hope this has on me, that I hope to have on my community and moving forward. But usually students struggle with fitting. I mean, 7,000 characters sounds like a lot, but usually students have a lot to say, and it's hard to fit everything into those restrictions. Now, That's the first major essay. The other two used to be in prior years one essay that they've then broken up to try to make it a little bit easier for reviewers to get the content that they're looking for. But it goes back to what I was saying earlier about both essays are about community impact. The second one, building mutual understanding, that is in the community that you are going to. When you read through the prompt, I think it's sometimes, not always, sometimes it gets students that come away with it and feel like they have to be almost like cartoonishly patriotic in that response of like, I'm representing the United States and, you know, American ideals, and please God, don't do that. Because it doesn't come off the way like, for example, I think you can approach this essay in a few ways that are effective. And I've had students that have talked about for example, identities that they hold. And this is why it's important for someone like myself to be in this space, doing this work, participating in this program, whatever that looks like, because this is what I represent when I'm in this space. I've had students that have talked about the value of the work that they're doing. Like, this is why it's so important that I do this research here. You know, this is how I'm engaging with this community, and this is what I'm sharing about the work that we do back in the United States. I've had students that have talked about you know, like sharing ideas, you know, like for example, in like our healthcare system, like I'm going to this new place to study how they do things so I can fix this, whatever you want to say about our system here in the US, but you kind of get the point. And so what is it that you are sharing in that space, or how are you, again, coming to that mutual understanding? The third essay, I would say, is probably the easier one of the three to write, because it's pitching an idea. Like, again, you identify the community that you would like to work with and how you would like to work with that community. So for example, I asked students to do three things. Tell me what that community is. And so, okay, I'm going back to my former high school because I want to talk to seniors at that high school. I want to you know, two, name the impact. You know, I want to talk to them about you know, how to apply to college. And yeah, I'm going to talk about studying abroad and how you can pursue these scholarships, these other opportunities, but this is the content that I'm sharing with them. And then conclude with, what do you hope are the takeaways? And so it's like, well, I hope students maybe have a higher sense of self-efficacy, like they're more confident in their ability to, you know, write these college application essays. Maybe they're more confident in applying to these scholarships. Maybe they're more confident in studying abroad. You know, so if you can tell me who you want to work with, how you want to work with them, and what the impact is, boom, that is a follow-on service project essay that is effective. Now, these other ones, like I said previously, are only relevant if your study abroad program is going to be focused on that critical need language. So 2,000 characters, why is this language critical to my future? The supplemental STEM essay, why is this research necessary? No letters of recommendation required. And to reiterate, the application deadline is March 7th. Something important to remember, and this is for any Gilman cycle, is that you can apply for programs up to a full year in advance of those programs starting. So maybe some of you attending today, you know, are like, well, I don't plan to study abroad this summer, but next year, you know, I think I want to, you know, like, okay, cool. Is that program next fall? Like, if it is, you're still eligible to apply. Is that program next spring? Cool, you're still eligible to apply. So you kind of have this this window that, you know, just shifts with the deadline every single year. And so I had students last cycle in October that I knew I wanted to study abroad during the summer. I had a good idea, even though I hadn't been accepted yet, I had a good idea for where that program is going to be. So I'm going to shoot my shot and see what happens. And then I had multiple students found out they were recipients. And so now, I mean, it's January, they know they have funding through Gilman. My program doesn't start until the summer. I'm applying to other scholarships. And so it kind of hopefully makes you feel a little bit more confident of like, okay, well, I got $4,000 in the bank already, you know, and now I can apply to other things. I can maybe, you know, save up a little bit additional funding. Maybe I can hit up an auntie, you know, just to give me a little bit more cash just for the summer because it's my birthday and, you know, coming up in March, I don't know, whatever it is, but it gives you time. Now, conversely, I had a few students that applied back in October that didn't get selected. But they have complete applications that are still good applications that we now have 2 months to make tweaks and edits to, and you can reapply for this March deadline. So the same goes for this cycle. So if you're studying abroad this summer, like great, this is the time to apply. If you're studying abroad next fall, next spring, it is still the time to apply. But the benefit of applying early is that you have that safety net of like, hey, I can always reapply. But if it does work out, then cool. I know I have money in the bank and I know that I have a couple extra months to prepare for that program. Does that all make sense to everyone? And like I said, feel free to type any questions into the chat. Or either of you have questions. Hopefully this means I am being extremely thorough in my descriptions. I already mentioned this, so I won't spend too much time on it. If you are the dependent of an active duty military member, you're eligible for the Gilman Scholarship. The Gilman McCain Scholarship would be technically the one that you apply to. I can go ahead and tell you this one is pretty under applied to. Like the reason this award exists is because like this student population, it is hard to identify, it's hard to recruit. And so if you're eligible, please let us know. We'd be happy to talk to you more about that. Now that kind of concludes the Gilman portion. Of course, I will circle back to that, answer questions at the end. This is just going to be a brief run through of some of the other fellowships that you might be interested in or eligible for. Freeman Asia, I think, is easy to describe because it is very similar in many ways to the Gilman Scholarship. It just has a couple requirements that Gilman doesn't have, but by and large, we are here to fund summer study abroad experiences with students that can demonstrate financial need, but specifically if you are studying in Central, South Asia, Southeast Asia for at least 8 weeks. This one does have a GPA requirement of a 2.8. Gilman has no GPA requirement, and Freeman Asia is not exclusive to Pell recipients. You just need to demonstrate financial need. But Freeman Asia kind of has this like very specific focus, like that Gilman still has, but just to a slightly greater degree, in that we are ideally looking for students that are wanting to study abroad in these countries. You can see them listed there: Cambodia, China, Hong Kong, Indonesia, Japan, and so on. But and I've had students that have done this in the past. I've had students that have applied to both Gilman and Freeman Asia, and you can stack that funding if you do receive both. Now, other awards to consider. Yes.
Do they like take into consideration, do they ask you if you have other scholarships?
Gilman will ask if you have if you're receiving any other financial support, but that's not a reason why they wouldn't select you, because in many cases, students' need is going to outweigh the scholarships that they're getting. Like, you know, hypothetically, okay, so I'm applying to an FSU IP program. It's $12,000. Maybe I have $3,000 of scholarships already secured, you know, so I still have $9,000 of need. Gilman can provide up to $5,000, you know, so again, it gives them a window, because there have been students in the past where, you know, it's like I have maybe $9,000 of that 12,000, so I don't need the full 5, you know, but again, there's a lot that goes into it, to where students in each pool for Gilman are going to be ranked, and the students that are ranked the highest will qualify for that $5,000 if they need that $5,000, and then it goes down from there, like 4,500, 4,000. But so you are asked to list it, but it's not going to be a reason why they do or do not select you. Does that make sense? Yeah. It's a good question. Other questions, and feel free to type them into the chat about Gilman or about the selection criteria, anything like that. So, yes, no, please, keep on going.
And gold scholars.
Okay, cool.
So like I'm looking at programs, but like honestly, depending on how much each costs and what I get depends on where I go. So if I see a program that I really like, but it's $10,000, I like do I list that program? But like, if I don't get the Gilman, then I wouldn't end up doing that, cause you know, cause I'm not like banking on that money.
Right, right. And so I know Warren pretty well. I mean, we're only a couple offices away, and I know he's very flexible with his students to shift programs if needed to make adjustments, but I think you owe it to yourself, at least for your Gilman application, to go with, this is my top choice. And
Yeah,
this is what I want to do, this is why I want to do it, and shoot your shot. And we can cross that bridge if we need to, if say you don't get accepted into that internship for Global Scholars, or you do need to change locations, it's not the end of the world, we can make adjustments. And so, again, that's kind of the benefit for Gilman in applying early, is that, you know, if plans change, you have time to make adjustments. But use your advisor, use Warren, use our office. We're more than happy to work with you and make those adjustments if you need to. But I would encourage you to apply to what is your top choice for right now.
okay.
Yeah.
Do I have to have a program selected for Gilman, a specific program?
So you can talk in your application,
Yeah.
you can talk about being selected to Global Scholars. You know, it's a program at Florida State that's helped students find internships. You know, you can describe that. So it's like, I know I'm going abroad. But for your application, I would encourage you to, it may not be finalized yet by the time that Gilman is due, but I would encourage you to choose, like, you know, this program, this internship, this is what I plan to do, and kind of pitch it as like it being set in stone when, you know, maybe it's mostly, but you know, we're still figuring out finer details, but give them as much specificity as you can. Now, a couple other programs to look into, for either this year, next year, just, you know, during your time at Florida State, is if you're interested in language study, the Critical Language Scholarship, the David L. Boren Scholarship are really fantastic opportunities to get you the language proficiency that you need. We won't get into all of the finer details, but essentially the Critical Language Scholarship, that's a funded summer program. The Boren Scholarship can be anywhere from 6 months to a full academic year, studying abroad and studying that language. CLS has a couple requirements that for some languages, not all, that you are coming with some level of proficiency. Boren, by and large, does not have that. They just need to know this is why you are studying this language relative to national security efforts. It's a very broad definition. Students have defined national security relative to public health, relative to other social services, relative to human rights. But if that's something that sounds interesting to you, more than happy to talk about it more deeply in a one-on-one meeting. But Boren likes to see students that are wanting to maybe go on to careers in foreign service with the federal government. CLS does not have that same priority. They just want to know you're committed to this language for whatever field you do plan to enter. Let's see. Okay. We have a question that I've been accepted to a summer program through FSU already. How does that work with Gilman? Would that be a close call by the time the results come out? So if you've already been accepted to a summer program, that's great. It may be a bit of a close call, I guess, in the sense that if you still have financial need, you should definitely apply for the Gilman scholarship. You know, but I've had students in the past that have had to treat Gilman because of that tight window between nomination and the time that their program starts, that Gilman almost is treated as a reimbursement. And so obviously I don't want to put you in any situation, or any like precarious financial situation, but if you're committed to going on this program and you think that's feasible, Gilman can serve as that reimbursement, like I said. If you are nominated, there's like, and this will all be in the email that they send to you, but it's like, you'll need to send your official transcript. For the application, it's just unofficial, birth certificate, some other forms. You need to send them your banking information because the way they distribute the scholarship is just through a direct deposit. So it takes time to get that together. But yes, it may be a tight window, but you're still eligible to apply. And then we had another question. What is the process for reaching out to working with a Gilman advisor? So I'll have our information at the end of this. And so you can reach out to Keyshawn or myself directly, or you can just email our ONF email address, just onf@fsu.edu, and that contacts Keyshawn, myself, and Bonnie. And then depending on your availability, So in your email, just say like, hey, I'm interested in applying to the Gilman Scholarship, maybe any other context that helps us understand where you're at. These are the days and times that I'm available, and then we will see with our availability who can meet with you. So yeah, feel free to reach out to us. Now, a couple of these others, Princeton in Asia, Princeton in Africa are two separate programs. And those are for internship experiences. Students usually apply to those during their senior year, but they do have internship opportunities of shorter length prior to that. But that kind of treat that as a post-undergrad internship experience for a year abroad. And they update these postings, these partnerships every single year. And so you can find them in many different fields and areas of expertise. Humanity in Action, that's one that's open right now that, you know, if you're interested, we'd be happy to meet with you as soon as possible. But Humanity in Action is focused on human rights and social justice initiatives, both from a historical and contemporary perspective. They don't care what your field of study is. They just care about why are these topics, why are these issues relevant to your work and what you want to do in the future. So they have both a domestic program in Atlanta, and then I believe they have 4 programs over in Europe. Really excellent program, takes place, I believe it's over 4 or 5 weeks over the summer. Project Horseshoe Farm, that is a program for students that are interested in public health, interested in social work, maybe want to go on to medical school, or interested in education. It's a pretty eclectic program, but again, primarily they do have internships, but primarily for after your time as an undergraduate. It's a 13-month-long gap year experience. And it's intentionally working with communities of need. So for example, they have a couple postings in Alabama to work with rural communities that have maybe difficulty accessing educational resources, healthcare resources, and so forth. And then they have a few postings in rural California, but that does require that you have Spanish proficiency. So DoddRise, Amgen, both STEM research opportunities that take place in Germany for Dodd and in the US or East Asia for Amgen. Those programs update yearly, so take a look at it, but you don't need to know the language to participate. All these labs operate in English, but that is a fully funded summer research program. The US-UK Fulbright Summer Institute, that's also one that's open right now for freshmen and sophomores. It's a month-long study abroad experience, takes place in the UK. But again, those programs, the curriculum updates every single year. So go and look and see what is available. Many different fields of interest are eligible. And then the last one, the Fulbright US Student Program, that is kind of one of our more culminating fellowships for rising seniors or alumni or graduate students. That is up to a full year abroad, either to fund a graduate degree program, to fund a research project, to fund an English teaching assistantship, to fund a creative art project. There are many, many, many different types of Fulbrights out there. But the point is, start with Gilman for right now. But a Gilman scholarship, a Gilman nomination can snowball into, and like I said, I've seen this throughout the last almost decade that I've been working with this scholarship, how a Gilman scholarship, a Gilman nomination will lead into these other fellowships. And so if you allow it to snowball and continue to apply over your time at Florida State, I think you may come to see, you know, the similarities with these applications, hopefully build your confidence, see what you are capable of achieving during your time here. And so start with Gilman for right now. Send us an email with your availability. Should be this next slide. And we'd be happy to meet with you as soon as next week. But we have, like I said, just under 2 months to work on an application. You know, and so even if you're not planning to apply for Gilman this cycle, if you're just wanting to plan maybe for next year, that's also okay. Keyshawn has walk-in hours, would be happy to sit down and chat with you. But thank you so much for joining. If you're joining us virtually, still happy to answer questions if you type them into the chat. But more than welcome to head out if you need to. But and for those attending in person, please grab snacks, as many as you would like. So thanks, everyone.